So this video is going to take us through gross negligence manslaughter application question. Again, it's a type of involuntary manslaughter, so it is an offence. So the scenario that we're going to focus on today is this one. The defendant, Pretty, has been caring for her elderly aunt who's very frail and unable to walk without assistance. Pretty goes on holiday and leaves her aunt on her own, and her aunt dies due to lack of food. So we are advising our defendant as to whether they are likely to be held liable for gross negligence manslaughter in respect of the death of their aunt. So gross negligence manslaughter, it has the term negligence in it, and there is an overlap with the law of negligence on the civil side. But we are looking at this from a criminal perspective, so we need to be using criminal concept, criminal cases. You can mention the case of Donahue, but you don't need to at this point. So we're going to state the first element required is a duty of care. And in criminal law, omissions give rise to a duty to of care, a duty to act. And the key ones that are likely to come up in a scenario: parental relationships, assumption of responsibility, creating a dangerous situation. But it could be the others: contract, public duty, statutory duty. We can explain this in the case of Willoughby, where even criminal enterprise can give rise to a duty of care. In this case, Pretty volunteered to look after her aunt, so looking at Stone Dobinson, and she takes on the duty when she agrees to do this. We then have to state that there must be a breach of that duty, and it's when our defendant falls below the standard expected of them. This is seen in the leading case of Adamaco from 1994, in which an anaesthetist failed to notice or respond when an oxygen tube became disconnected supplying their patient, and that led to the death. Adamaco did nothing for 6 minutes, which was way above and beyond what an average anaesthetist would have done. And we can apply that by leaving her aunt to go on holiday and not making any other arrangements for her care, Pretty has clearly fallen below the standard expected when she took on the duty to look after her aunt, suggesting that she has breached the duty. We then need to look at breach of duty has got to cause death. And this is a causation question. Causation in fact, using the but-for test. Causation in law, the operative and substantial cause test. As always with causation, if it's a big issue, if it's not clear what the cause was, then you must go into a lot of detail. But here, but for Pretty leaving her aunt, the aunt wouldn't have died, because we are told that the cause of the death was as a result of a lack of food. Therefore, leaving was the operative and substantial cause of the death, and there are no intervening events. The negligence has got to be gross, and meaning it's got to go beyond a matter of mere compensation, and it's got to justify that criminal conviction, and the jury decides on this. The case of Bateman says that in order to establish criminal liability, the facts must be such that in the opinion of the jury, negligence of the accused went beyond that matter of mere compensation. So money simply wouldn't do, and it deserves a criminal punishment. Clearly, Pretty's actions by just leaving her aunt go beyond a matter of mere compensation and do deserve a criminal punishment. And then finally, and this is a bit that students always forget, there must be a risk of death, or at least a risk of serious injury where death could occur as a result. This is seen in the case of Misra, which confirms this, that the risk of death must be from our defendant's act or omission. And here there is obviously a risk to the aunt by leaving her, and the risk is increased the longer she is left. So we're led to the conclusion that Pretty is likely to be held liable for the death of her aunt. So that is how you use your state, explain, apply model to apply the law of gross negligence manslaughter to a scenario question. Make sure you're going into a bit of detail on your application, and even if you're saying things that sound so obvious, if it's obvious, it's probably the right answer. Don't avoid saying something. If you leave somebody who can't walk with no food, they're likely to die. Just because it sounds obvious doesn't mean you shouldn't write it.